Star Wars Visions is an anthology series of non-canon shorts set in the Star Wars universe by several external animation studios. Season 1 was a collection of shorts created by several anime studios, and Season 2 expanded the roster of studios from Japanese to international. Shortly after, I uploaded what was, at the time, my favorite video I had ever created, which was a ranking of all 18 Star Wars Vision shorts. It's kinda hard to go back to, the quality of my videos have definitely improved since, but I loved making it. Nowadays, I do think some of the opinions and statements don't hold true, so the idea of remaking the video with the higher standards I have now was always in the back of my mind, but I was just never sure when the right time was. And now, Season 3 has arrived, which returns to the land of rising suns in terms of studios. Given that a new season is pretty unlikely, though not impossible, I think now is that time. So let's do this. Today we'll be going through all 27 shorts in the series, going back to Seasons 1 and 2 to see how they hold up, as well as seeing where Season 3 ranks among them. Now, I am going to approach this ranking a little differently, where before I started from the worst and worked my way up to the best, I'm just going to go in episode order, seeing that a handful of episodes in Season 3 are sequels to some in Season 1. In this kind of ranking, I just like to have as much context as possible, and I don't want to explain why a sequel episode is so much lower than its original without the context. Hopefully that doesn't turn you off too much. We're also going into a lot more detail than I did before, so spoilers are loose for this whole series. So let's start with Season 1, which consisted of shorts created exclusively by Japanese studios. I'll be going through these for the first time in a while, but from what I remember, Season 1 was mostly pretty entertaining, though not withholding a few stinkers. But let's see what's changed in the 2 years since I've seen it fully. Here we go. The Duel was at the top of my list in my previous ranking. While it kind of hurt that the series peaked at its first episode, it's not like I couldn't recommend other episodes in the series. The Duel was a pretty high peak. And going back to it now, I mean, keeping in mind that this was before Andor, this was probably the peak of Disney Star Wars at the time. Created by Kamikaze Douga, a good portion of the Duel's quality comes from its style. Star Wars was based on old samurai movies, so let's embrace that. This entire short is set in monochrome, with the notable exception of anything that emits light. LEDs, blaster bolts, and lightsabers all have their true colors. And that's on top of the design, based on traditional Japanese architecture and culture. It feels like they truly asked how these elements would fit into the Star Wars universe. It's a glory to look at. And the story it tells is no slouch either. The Duel follows the Ronin, a mysterious wanderer in a rural village when a band of bandits come to raid the place. So the Ronin, shown to be of Sith nature, comes to take down the bandits. This is when the titular duel takes place, and it's a joyride. Everyone loves the Ronin's lightsaber, and yeah, why wouldn't they? Canonically, it's missing its off switch and must be sheathed in its scabbard. Honestly, a simple but genius design. The choreography is great, and seeing two Sith duke it out is something we so rarely see. The aura of mystery around the Ronin is the kind of mystery that actually works for both the short and Star Wars. We only see so much of his character in the 12-minute runtime, yet there are so many small details that hint at his character. He's seemingly heroic, until you realize he doesn't really move against the bandits until he sees the Sith. His actions are then seemingly selfish, but they work in favor of the village's safety, and as the chief says, he's much more humble than, say, any of the Sith in Bane's legacy. This feels like a story that could happen in Star Wars, though I feel obligated to bring up one criticism, and that is the fact that the bandits have First Order Stormtrooper armor, meaning this takes place post-Rise of Skywalker, and it's very unlikely that there would be dark-side users, let alone a Sith as we know him. But that's really a nitpick from the Star Wars nerd in me, and really, that kind of misses the whole point of Star Wars Visions, which allows for such experimentation no matter how well it fits into the timeline. That's not points against the Duel, but that's just more points that can go elsewhere. Other than that, it's just perfect for what it is, a true testament to the idea of letting an anime studio handle a Star Wars project. Shame it's the beginning of the series, and while it may be a great first impression, everything else may feel a little disappointing as a follow-up. But the video is still young. Let's see if anything can top it. Yeah, this isn't topping it. I've seen a handful of rankings put Tatooine Rhapsody as the weakest of Season 1, if not one of the weakest of the whole series, and while I definitely disagree with that, they did miss the mark on this one, but not for the reason you may think. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the idea of having a band in this galaxy. That's actually a really good one, and there are elements of it that are handled really well here. For one, the animation is much more chibi, but it really works in an attempt to bring a more lighthearted and small conflict to the universe. The designs of the band members are all great, with their stage being a ship, cool instrument design, and the song they sing isn't half bad. Joseph Gordon-Levitt can sing, apparently. I do remember listening to some podcasts that praised this episode because it felt like something that can happen in the Star Wars universe. At some point, you can totally hear Free Yourself on a radio in one of the movies or TV shows, and it wouldn't be out of place, and I'm inclined to agree. But as memorable as the designs of these characters are, I couldn't tell you any of their names. Cool designs, but really boring personalities. And here's where the criticisms start. The conflict of the Hutt being an heir to the Syndicate did not need to be here. As Boba Fett's biggest stan, and as much as I'm glad Temuera came in to voice him, why is he here? It's all a major tonal clash. I'm happy for the band in the end, but it feels wrong. I don't know anything about these band members, and I kind of wish we felt a little bit more connection between them all. By the way, this episode literally opens up on a Jedi running from battle. I used to think it was Order 66, but on further inspection it looks like those just battle droids. And that just opens a whole can of worms that might have made for a better conflict than this. This guy literally abandoned his post in the Jedi Order to be a singer, surviving Order 66 in the process. Does that not weigh on him? That's such a personal conflict that can fit in really nicely with a band's plot. And wait, why doesn't Boba take in the Jedi too when he sees the lightsaber? That's a Jedi right there. A lot of credits coming from the Empire. That's just the rewrite in my brain working, of course, but as it stands, Tatooine Rhapsody is a fine enough short to turn your brain off to, but I can't tell you to turn your brain off in good conscience when recommending something. It's not the weakest of season 1, but it ranked a bit too high in my initial video. Obviously going under the Duel, but I really wanted to like it more. But as far as making a band story in the Star Wars universe, I feel this could have been done a little bit better. So, people usually say that a piece of media was written by a 5-year-old to mock it. Something like Ready Player One or Space Jam: A New Legacy comes to mind. It does tend to feel like a child blending all his toys together in what seems like a good story in his head, because Spider-Man and Luke Skywalker on screen at the same time makes for good storytelling. The Twins was written by the 5-year-old who everybody wanted to be friends with because he had all the cool Star Wars toys and knew how to use papier-mâché to make them look even cooler. Created by Trigger, the Twins has 2 Star Destroyers that combine to make a Death Star cannon, inhabited by 2 Sith twins in Darth Vader suits with their own droids resembling R2 and 3PO, filled with exposition of years because kids don't appreciate so don't tell, Star Wars quotes no matter how unnatural they feel, forgetting about character development because that's hard to think about, breathable air and space because mom didn't buy the matching spacesuits, technology and force abilities that will make Rise of Skywalker defenders blush, and the most cookie-cutter good versus bad conflict since that one D&D campaign you ran where you thought your villain had a point. As a non-specific example. And you know what? This might as well be the Star Wars equivalent of a B movie. It knows it's nothing more than a couple of kids playing with their Star Wars toys as opposed to somebody actually trying to write the next Andor, and thus, it gets my love on that end. Of course, it's really dependent on the viewer. If you freaked out at the Star Wars cameo in the Lego movie, you are going to riot with this one. If you hated when Ben said hello there in Kenobi, then stay far away from this one. As for me, I would never say this one is void of creativity. Everything here is just the Lightspeed RAM, but on steroids. But the difference being is that nothing here feels like they wrote themselves into a corner and just had to break the rules. This isn't the finale of a 40, almost 50-year-old franchise. This is the non-canon short with no characters we've seen previously. This short is trying to be as insane as possible. And thus, I have to put it above Tatooine Rhapsody, though I totally get if you don't. I really tried to like this one on second viewing. I actually had a friend who really liked this one, and he saw how low I put it on my initial list, and then he eventually came to realize that I was actually onto something. And I think the main culprit is that it's among the longer shorts, but it just does not use its time effectively. A factor with this entire series is that these are shorts. Some episodes, like the Duel and the Twins, use that to their advantage, creating short stories that can be easily concluded and yet leave an impact. But this might be the only short that feels just a bit too long. If not that, it could have used its runtime a bit more efficiently. But you know, I did end up enjoying it a bit more this time. For one, I found myself appreciating the art style much more. It's incredibly simple, yet so strong, very reminiscent of the older Ghibli movies. On top of that, I get the vibe a bit more. This Jedi comes to this planet and learns about it alongside the audience. She comes to realize the nature of the planet and the arising conflict. It's actually really effective build up to a climax that lasts 2 minutes. Maybe 3. And once that climax is over, you start to think of the handful of scenes that could have been cut in favor of being a bit more effective. There's a big focus on the sanctity of the planet's nature and possible Force-like attributes that are a part of it, alongside the idea that this village can take on the hostile Force, but none of that really comes into play in the end. This Jedi, whose name is F, and this guy who looks like an animated Harrison Ford take on bandits really easily, using mostly technology. The whole village taking on the hostile Force? Failed. The nature of the planet being used to oppose the technologically superior gang? Never brought up. They really rushed the last few minutes, and had they not, this would easily be above the Twins. But this time, I'll put it above Tatooine Rhapsody because I did find myself pretty enamored by the first bit of it. The Ninth Jedi is often noted as the best of the series. I initially didn't think so, thinking the Duel was better, but what did I think this time? I remember why I put the Duel over it. The dialogue in this one is pretty terrible.
I'm here because I received this encoded transmission summoning me.
The Force. You said that it was strong here, but I sense the dark side in this place.
You're all strange. Like this is the last time we'll see each other.
Whether that's a Star Wars or translation issue is up to you to decide, which really sucks because I can't really complain about anything else. The story of the Sabersmith's daughter bringing lightsabers to the last of the Jedi in an attempt to establish a new Jedi Order is great. The trek to get there is fun, well animated, and it all makes sense in the universe of Star Wars. And the idea of lightsabers reflecting a user's connection to the Force is really well executed here. And Spoilers, on repeat viewing, the twist wasn't the most effectively set up, and nothing really changes once you know it, but it is a pretty cool scene cinematically. And the lightsaber fight is alright. It has to work under the pretense that very few people in this room have handled the lightsaber before, but it works. Though for being one of the longer shorts, it's very effective. Though I'd be lying if I said it wasn't trying to pitch a longer story. A handful of these shorts sadly feel like a pilot as opposed to a standalone story, unfortunately. And while The Ninth Jedi did get a sequel episode in season 3, we're yet to see if it plays off as a new story or just an unfinished continuation. So yeah, The Ninth Jedi is great, but I feel completely justified putting it under the Duel. This one is a lot more epic, but with clumsy dialogue and the feeling of wanting more. It just doesn't stick the landing like that one did. Still fantastic though. So, after making my initial list, I went on to watch and read other people's rankings on the series, and I definitely listened to some other opinions to realize the error of my thinking in some areas. Though, I'm not bending a knee to anyone, and I will defend myself in the wake of any asinine opinions, like claiming Jar Jar is a Jamaican stereotype, or saying TOB1 is the best of Season 1. He is not, and it is not. TOB1 is bad. I'm sorry, but I'm staying by this opinion. It's about a droid of an armless professor dreaming of being a Jedi. Now, that alone isn't a bad idea. Something I always like exploring in universes with multiple sapient species, or sentient AI, is the desire to be more than you are. In a universe where you're born a machine or a Wookiee, what must it be like to dream of being a human? What must it be like being the child of a powerful Sith Lord with no midichlorians? As another non-specific example. TOB1 wanting to be a Jedi is not the problem. There are 3 problems. One is that TOB1 is annoying. Maybe it's a doubling issue, but I could not stand him. Maybe part of that is due to the fact that he takes nothing seriously until after his master is dead. Oh yeah, problem 2. The plot of this short is kind of bonkers. TOB1 wants to be a Jedi, but the professor says there's work to do instead. But then he insists TOB1 to go find a kyber crystal. It's somewhere on the planet. So he goes to look in the basement where the professor told him never to go, and he finds a ship, he activates the radio, and alerts an Inquisitor to their location. I don't feel sympathy here. Not only is it insane that TOB1 could activate the radio on the ship that easily, but was it that hard to tell him there are Jedi hunters out there and pretending to be one would not be good? That's a failure on both of their parts. TOB1 got his master killed, and his master failed him by not telling him how dangerous things were. After the fact, TOB1 seems to be a bit more aware of the stakes, fulfilling the wishes of his master, and eventually... Okay, problem number 3. I get that there's a theory that TOB1 is the Force ghost of the professor's long-dead Padawan in the shell of a droid, and that would explain why a droid can use the Force. And honestly, I'm not terribly against that concept, but not only is that never confirmed to be the case, and not only is this Inquisitor also seemingly a droid, despite being shocked that the droid is a Jedi, but how does this kyber crystal materialize? I'm sorry, but more than any other short so far, this just feels like an idea with absolutely no direction. They had a post-it note of Astro Boy Jedi on the board and threw darts at the wall to assemble the story. It's bad. I'm sorry. Bottom of the list so far. Remember that 5-year-old that made the twins? Well, he grew up and took a creative writing class. Now he's significantly less cool because his story needs actual themes and character development. The Elder is the second short made by Trigger, and I'm dumbfounded whether it's better or worse than the twins. For one, it's significantly more restrained. More than any other short, this is the one that can fit the cleanest into the Star Wars timeline. It may as well be canon. It's just the story of a Jedi and a Padawan pre-Phantom Menace. Nothing it does affects the story of Star Wars as a whole. Something a few of Disney's own shows could learn from, actually. It kind of did, I guess. There wasn't a lot in The Acolyte that I loved, but one aspect I did really like was watching the Jedi stage an operation like a police force as opposed to a military. We see so little of the Jedi Order outside of wartime efforts, so this endeavor is exactly what scratches that kind of itch. The titular Elder, voiced by Mr. Ping, is a Sith-like warrior consumed by time and a desire for excitement. He makes for a formidable opponent who was only defeated because he was basically on his deathbed. Admittedly, the lightsaber choreography itself has a bit to be desired, but it does leave you with the notion of existentialism. There will come a day when you will become weaker, and what matters then isn't power, because you'll lose that in the end. And the battle between this and the twins kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The twins was Penguin, Guano, and Zane, while this one was much more lax and deep. I think about the Elder much more than the twins because, well, I guess power wasn't what mattered in the end. So, in short, sometimes less is more. Props to the Elder for this one. Above the twins, but below the Ninth Jedi. Wait, I need to change for this one. Alright, here we go. Lop and Ocho. Yep, this one is definitely my guilty pleasure. Lop and Ocho is about an escaped Lepi slave joining the family of a Yakuza leader named Yoshiburo and his daughter Ocho in the wake of Imperial colonization on this planet. Time jumps 7 years, and there's a feud between Yoshiburo's desire to maintain the planet and Ocho's desire for Imperial support. And Lop is caught between the two. She doesn't want either, she just wants the two to reconcile. This is a much more nuanced take on this kind of conflict. As audience members, yeah, obviously the Empire is bad, but in this portrayal, it's not stupid to think Ocho is doing the right thing. It's a very classic traditionalism versus progress conflict, but with family divides sewn in. Lop does eventually have to take a side, but it's definitely an afterthought. You'd think the former Imperial slave would be a bit more against them, but her reasoning against Ocho joining the Empire is entirely familial. More than anyone else, Lop sees what's most important to everyone. And when Ocho seems beyond hope, you feel how heartbroken Lop really is. And yeah, it's just a really compelling conflict. Animation is fantastic, and Lop's design is just phenomenal. As someone who prefers anthropomorphic animals to be more biologically accurate as opposed to humanoid, I'm shocked at how much I loved every detail of this interpretation of Leppy. Would I change a few things? Sure. Her tail is most notably a bit too round for my liking. But this was a radical design, and I can see it coming back in some form, much better than Jax. No, the other one. That's Bucky O'Hare. There we go. With what little time we have, you really do get a sense that Ocho loves Lop, up until her Imperial tendencies get in the way, and Yoshiburo loves Lop, even though the struggles of a reluctant adoption are in play. And man, more than any other episode so far, this episode screams I am a fully fledged movie and/or TV show compacted into 20 minutes. We're given reasons for and against the Empire. We're told this planet has a long history. The Yoshiburo clan has stood for a millennia, and Yoshiburo may have favored Ocho over Lop, but we never really get a chance to see it. And man, would I kill for a few episodes that take place in that time skip. I would have loved to see Yoshiburo struggle to accept a new daughter into his home, see Lop assist in clan operations, or Lop struggle with the loss of her birth family. Isn't it weird for a series surrounding the struggles of this one family, there's so little family drama? And I'm sorry if I'm the only one that thinks a Yakuza family drama in the Star Wars universe sounds phenomenal. Give me money, Lucasfilm, I'll make. And I still have to say this. Lop having the Force is dumb. Yeah, I'm still pretty salty about this one scene where Lop forces a blade into her hand with no prior implication of such or shock value after the fact. I'm not even against Lop being Force sensitive, just not with this little buildup or impact. But other than that, man, this climax sequence is great, and I really want to put this above the Ninth Jedi. I really enjoyed it a lot more this time around, but I recognize that this is totally a guilty pleasure, and I have to put it below. The Ninth Jedi is objectively a more complete package than Lop and Ocho. I can't put it above it in good faith. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to write a novel in this continuity and chuck it at Kathleen Kennedy until she publishes it. So, funny story, I didn't discuss Akakiri initially because at the time, I felt it was simply the Village Bride 2.0 and declared it as such. I thought it was the same basic structure as the Village Bride but with better watercolor animation. I don't think that now, but that says more about the Village Bride than it does this one. So what do I actually have to say about it? It's one of those shorts where the animation is the most memorable thing about it. Trying to aim for the watercolor vibe of Japanese paintings, at its peak it looks fantastic, among the best animation in the series, and in its worst, man, that character's design is a choice. Why did I become Australian? The faces looking so exaggerated is a decent idea on paper, and maybe even in certain frames, but in animation, it's certainly rougher around the edges. The animation, that looks great, but what the animators chose to animate is a harder pill to swallow, and that might be intentional. This is a story that's not meant to have a happy ending. It's darker. Maybe you wish the characters looked better in the way you wish the short had more upbeat plot. Or maybe I'm looking too deeply into this and it's just not a good short overall. I really don't know what to think of Akakiri's plot. It revolves around a Jedi escorting a princess through the wilderness to her kingdom, which has been taken over by a Sith. And they do absolutely nothing with this concept. The trek there isn't too visually interesting and is met with little to no real conflict. Whenever it seems like we're going to see something cool about this world, the short just cuts away and we don't get to see anything. We see none of this place of the gods, even after one of the travelers goes missing with no explanation of how he survived. And the final conflict is just pitifully boring. And it's all just so... wow. This ranked way too high on my first list. This is easily worse than most of the shorts in Season 1. They really took so much potential and just squandered it. Great looking animation, terrible character and set design, implications of greater nature to this world and conflict? Catch it some other time. Definitely worse than Tatooine Rhapsody. Is it worse than TOB1? Yeah, probably. I can at least see semblance of quality in that short, squandered by a lack of cohesion for anything happening. This is just boring, a terrible, terrible way to close out the season. And with that, Season 1 comes to a close. And honestly, I still love this first season. Out of the 9 episodes, there were 7 I liked and at least 3 I absolutely loved. This was a truly exceptional way to test the waters for outsourcing Star Wars projects to external foreign studios. And I was mostly very impressed, excited to see what the series had in store. And to be honest, since the first season, I've been mostly very disappointed. Not only has no bigger project come from such, but then season 2 came out 2 years later and definitely, how do I say, soiled the bed. Season 2 of Star Wars Visions expanded the roster of studios from Japanese to international, including studios from Great Britain, France, India, and more. And when I first saw the season, I was beyond disappointed. I liked 7 of the shorts in season 1. My first time around, do you want to know how many I liked in season 2? 3. And I really can't say I loved any of them like I did Lop and Ocho or the Duel. So my hopes aren't high, but as I did with The Village Bride, I will go in with an open mind. Maybe I'll like some of these a lot more than I did initially. I did see a lot of praise for shorts I absolutely despised after making my initial video, so let's see how this goes. Here is Star Wars Visions Season 2. Sith is an episode I felt unhappy about where it stood on my original list for a while now, but actually going back to watch it again, I can only put it so much higher. If for no other reason, this short looks phenomenal. Every detail of the short looks painterly, drawn on seemingly by hand. Textures and particles all have brushstrokes, and there are so many moving bits and details, a sight for very sore eyes. It's definitely very memorable, and I'm struggling to come up with anything to praise outside of the animation and art style. In my initial video, I said the short didn't feel at all like Star Wars, and for a while now, I thought that was kind of a stupid claim, but seeing it again for the first time since the premiere, I might have been onto something. Say what you want about any other short, but they are all distinctly Star Wars, except maybe Akakiri. But this one, the Star Wars elements like the droid, advanced technology, and the Force tend to seem like an afterthought. Where all the other shorts seem to ask, what can we do with this universe? This one seems to take a pre-existing idea and tries to squeeze the Star Wars elements into it. Maybe that's not the case. I have no proof other than trust me bro, so maybe I'm the only one who thinks this. Am I the only one who thinks this? Maybe I'm crazy. I will say, when you separate the Star Wars aspects in your mind, the animation is still great, and when the Star Wars elements come into play, they look fantastic, but there's something so off-putting about this short to me, and I think that's my problem, but maybe there's something else about it I just can't narrow down. Maybe all the abstractness of the art, maybe the lack of clarity of the structure in which this girl lives, maybe I'm just tired, I don't know. This is something I just can't find myself enjoying as much as I feel I should. Really, more than any other short so far, watch it for yourself, because I really just can't pinpoint what offsets me in this short, and maybe you'll be able to say such for yourself or claim that there's nothing wrong with it. I saw a comment on my last video saying this was much better than Lop and Ocho simply because the animation was so much more memorable than the family dynamics in that short, and if that's your taste, I have no problem with that. There is enjoyment to be had in that. On the basis of what would I rather watch on any given day, I'll put it above The Village Bride, but below The Twins, but I wouldn't even argue if you disagree. This was another one I put way too low initially, but unlike Sith, I can actually put this one much, much higher. And it's actually from a studio I've heard of before. You know Cartoon Saloon uses Moho? Anyway, Screecher's Reach is pretty great. Cartoon Saloon's signature animation is on full display here. These kids in a steel mill head to Screecher's Reach, a supposedly haunted cave. The journey there looks fantastic. A speeder ride through the starry fields is gorgeous on its own, but then we get to Screecher's Reach, and we kick it into full gear. Horror in Star Wars is something we don't get enough of, and while I don't think this is crazy scary, this is incredibly aesthetically appealing. The animation of this ghost is fantastic. Every frame just screams. It's all painterly, eerie, and leaves a lot to the imagination. I mean, up until it doesn't. But here's the thing, I think I completely missed the point of this short the first time around. I said in my first video that I didn't find the characters entertaining and the main girl was flat out unlikable, and that's still true, but I think that's the point. The main girl brought her friends to Screecher's Reach, almost got them killed, and abandoned them in the end, all so that she could get a better life. It's not meant to be a happy ending. It's meant to be a different kind of horror, one defined by the pit in your stomach when you realize that this girl will never see her friends again, and will probably see a lot of different kinds of horror in this galaxy. I mean, the ghost had some connection to the Sith at the end. Makes you think about what's in store for this girl. Eef. As I said before, this was way too low on my original list. Here, I'll actually put it above The Elder. I totally see the appeal behind this one now. Was I too harsh on In the Stars initially? No, I'm sorry. This one's still really pretty bad. The first of our stop motion shorts is very impressive visually, just like every other short so far, but it's mostly appealing for stop motion animation. But I really stand by everything I said in that initial video. It's an environmental message that digs its own grave surrounding two native sisters that aren't all that likable. The youngest girl says how strong she is, but she's so annoying you just want to see her humbled. The older sister is not that much better. It's trying to be a Lilo and Nani dynamic. Clearly she was thrust into a role she wasn't prepared for with a sister whose head is in the clouds and very young, but their dynamic doesn't have enough screen time to get across as loving as it thinks it is. And kid characters who have no grasp of a serious situation because they're young just never sits right with me. Kids are smarter than that, and they can shut up if told. And I really don't like how this short ends. The two sisters, who are yet to use the Force effectively, tear down an entire water container. Not only is this a stupid use of the Force and shouldn't have worked, but now all the good water is in the bad water. So it doesn't matter if there's good water or nature, as long as the colonizers don't have it. These girls are going to die. Similar to the Village Bride, it could have been an effective environmental theme akin to WALL-E, but it just did not think its climax through. Look, I get the intention, but this is about as good as Avatar in terms of environmentalist messages. It's almost childish and patronizing. I will say, I'll put it above TOB1 this time. Not only do I dig the stop motion, but given I wasn't as passionately critical of this one, at least not to the extent I was last time, I'll give this one the edge, though not by much. It just doesn't work in the end. I can see a revision of the story that puts it much higher somewhere, but that's just not what we got. I like Aardman. I like Wallace and Gromit and Pirates and Arthur Christmas and Flushed Away and all those movies. So when I think Aardman Star Wars short, I Am Your Mother is exactly what comes to mind. Goofy character designs? Check. Great framing? Check. Top-notch physical and verbal comedy? All there. It's a simple plot about bonding with embarrassing parents, basically a Goofy movie in structure, but it's Aardman's signature brand of humor that puts it above that basic structure. It's something I really can't do much justice to by describing, and sadly there isn't much that I can praise over the moon specifically. Nothing wrong with it, but it just doesn't do much more than some really good jokes, and humor is of course subjective. Since I need to spin out this section a little bit more, here's a list of jokes I liked. I like how much this short seems to hate Wedge Antilles. He's not a bad character at all, but this whole episode has a vendetta against him. I think that's funny. I like how the astromech is a dog. I like this one alien ripping out his yoke and just accepting defeat. We never see what happens to him. It's hilarious. This family of Wookiees is funny. The mini Death Star used to shoot the other racers is funny. I like how the somersault is called the Ryloth roll. Ryloth is just the planet where Twi'leks are from, and this just shows that they did their homework. I really appreciate that. I like how on a few shots outside the ship you can see the droid dog holding on for dear life. Did I mention this was a race? Oh, this story revolves around a school race for families. Should have mentioned that. It's cute how the pompous rival family has hair that looks like the back of Darth Vader's helmet. I like how the mom doesn't feel betrayed for being called embarrassing and instead just teaches her daughter to just own it. This is a fun episode. Probably the best quality fun episode. Going above the twins but below the elder. In my initial video, I said the Journey to the Dark Head was the best episode of Season 2, and here, I think that still stands. In the days of the Old Republic, a rustic temple is known for making prophetic visions in the stones below the two statues, a light and a dark one. This pilot believes that destroying the dark one will turn the tides of the future, preventing bad prophecies. I think, I'll be honest, I don't entirely understand the significance of the statues here or what this can accomplish. So the Jedi Order sends her with a Jedi to the statue, but they're intercepted by a Sith from the Jedi's path. Now, the immediate problem, this pilot isn't crazy likable. She got the approval from the Council, but is needlessly brash and dismissive of the Jedi. But she isn't that way for the whole short. Those are the only two problems I have. The rest of the short is fantastic, primarily because of this Jedi and his conflict. He's had his master killed by a Sith and struggles with the anger, which the Sith uses to his advantage. He wants nothing more than to kill the Sith, but that conflicts with his status as a Jedi, and he battles the light and dark within him. And honestly, the Sith is just one of the most entertaining parts of it. His personality is so confident and uptight, but also so chaotic. And the lightsaber choreography is some of the best in the series, going from on top of the speeder to inside a crystal cave. It's just exciting. The whole adventure is just great, and the blending of 2D animation and 3D spaces just looks gorgeous. And it definitely hits the philosophical angles of the light and dark akin to the Duel. I will say not much sticks out about this one in comparison to something like Screecher's Reach or the Twins, but everything it does do, being a gorgeous set of action scenes tied together with a strong internal conflict, is done about as perfectly as possible, and thus I'll slide it above Screecher's Reach, below Lop and Ocho. You know, one of my biggest regrets about my original video was putting the Spy Dancer below Tatooine Rhapsody. I think I really undersold this short. I think it's really underrated. For one, it's just beautiful. I know I've been saying that a lot, but considering that some of the shorts don't look absolutely jaw-dropping like The Elder, Tatooine Rhapsody, or even TOB1 to some degree, I think it's a fair praise. It almost looks like an animated comic book with its thick outlines, but the sheer creativity on display with its concept is astounding. It surrounds this dancer at a club where Imperials relax, but the dancing is a mix of ribbon twirling, trapeze, ease and tightrope, and it fits phenomenally into the world of Star Wars. The initial dance is a joy to watch, and then it's all intertwined with a battle scene afterwards. The movements of a trained dancer become very integral to surviving a firing barrage from stormtroopers. It's a fantastic action sequence that I was way too enamored in by coming back. Yeah, I had no clue what I was doing putting it below Tatooine Rhapsody. Unfortunately, there isn't much outside the outstanding visuals and animation. Make no mistake, that puts it above a good few others, but Loi's story isn't a whole lot more compelling than the others here. In fact, I'm convinced I only remembered her name because it just happens to be my sister's, go figure. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't emotional towards the end. I do like the story here. It's very well written for a Star Wars short, but it's just not a standout in the crowd. I'm honestly kind of confused as where to put this. It's obviously above Tatooine Rhapsody, but is it above the Village Bride, Sith, or the Twins? Honestly, probably. I know a lot of other rankings put this one as one of the weaker ones in Season 2, but I genuinely think it's pretty underrated. I can't put it above I Am Your Mother because that one is just a completely different energy that puts it in a league of its own, but it's definitely above the Twins. Okay, can I get on my soapbox? If anything in Season 3 is worse than Bandits of Golak, I might genuinely lose it. I've seen a handful of rankings put it anywhere other than the bottom, and I have to wonder if you're okay. Seriously, this feels like a Bollywood production of Rebels. It's not Rise of Skywalker bad, since that was a multi-$100 million effort and this was a short, but this is still one of my least favorite pieces of Star Wars media, but for completely different reasons than Book of Boba Fett, Kenobi, Acolyte, or Rise of Skywalker. I will say it's not completely void of quality. The Indian integration into the Star Wars universe was pretty good, a lot better than I give it credit for initially. The architecture and alien designs are very creative. That is it. I dislike every other element of this short. For one, it looks horrible. I feel justified in complimenting the other shorts on their animation because this one just looks terrible. Yeah, some of the alien designs are cool, but textures look ugly and movements look stilted. There are times when this short just looks like the budget was 3 cans of Monster and an IOU. And that leads me to the action scenes, which are just abysmal. Characters look like they have absolutely no weight to them with little sound design to boot. And this lightsaber fight, yep, it's still the worst I've ever seen. It's worse than Reylo, it's terribly staged, there's no weight to anything happening, and you can tell the animators just mapped out the key poses and let the computer do the rest. It honestly looks like just basic linear interpolation in Blender. I know this sounds really harsh, and I genuinely don't know much about the studio, but this was produced by Lucasfilm, owned by Disney. Disney gave this studio money. I'm all for cutting costs effectively to give animation charm, but not when you're a mega corporation with a stranglehold on the entertainment industry. That's of course assuming that they gave this studio less money than the other studios, and totally shame on them if they did. We don't know much about how this series was produced, so maybe that's the case. But if Lucasfilm just gave every studio a flat check and this is what they came up with, then I have no words. No matter who's to blame, this short just looks terrible. And then we get to the actual plot and writing of this short. My goodness, this is bad. So this brother is escorting his Force-sensitive sister in the time of the Empire, and she's just downright stupid. She has no sense of keeping things low-key to avoid detection, and most of the conflict in this episode is entirely her fault. She's just the embodiment of kids in bad situations not having enough brain cells to understand. The brother is just forgettable. He loves his sister, but he has to deal with being the older one. At least In the Stars had good animation. It's just terrible. I'm sorry if this is your favorite, but I just do not see it. This is the worst one here, and Season 3 is going to have to work at dethroning it for worst. You know, the pit was at the lower end of my last video, and I still think it was too high. I do praise the concept and somewhat realistic horror of these mining slaves being abandoned in a pit they dug themselves. It's akin to the prison arc of Andor, honestly. This is very much like something the Empire would do. They gave them their freedom, but now they aren't responsible for getting them out of the pit. Fine print and all. It's also very real that the people in the city wouldn't care, but after that element, it tends to lose me. The slaves get out by chanting, and it's a hopeful ending at the end. I like how the citizens just walk past the Imperial blockade and the Empire just gives up, though that's probably more of an ironic enjoyment. I get the message of spreading painful information, but it's still boring in the end. I'm much more into character-driven storytelling, as you can probably guess by the rest of this list, but this one just feels more like a documentary? I really don't know how to describe it. I get it, don't like big corporations or the government silence real issues that are happening, but if that's all there is to the short, then there's not that much to come back to. It's more effective than, say, the Lorax movie, but not quite as compelling or well written as the Lorax book. So at the end of the day, I'll put it above In the Stars. This one just had a few more things that worked than that one, even though that one is technically more character focused. It just fails at what the pit barely even tries. So, something I just couldn't wrap my head around was so many people putting Ao's song at the top of their Season 2 rankings. Not that it's bad in any way, I think I did rank it a little lower than it should have in the initial list, but it's just pretty forgettable to me. The final and best looking of the stop motion shorts sees a Kyber miner's daughter possess some kind of powerful voice that tempers Kyber crystals, and Ao is just as furry as Lop, so I don't want any comments saying I'm furry biased. But it turns out Ao is force sensitive, and her voice is a form of the force that triggers the Kyber crystals. She uses the force to save her father from a mining disaster, and then she goes off with his Jedi. Now, this short is very beautiful in a meditative sense. Every shot is akin to something you'd see in a cozy game. That alone puts it in a league of its own. But I'm just not engaged. I'm sure this connects to someone else more, but I just can't get invested in Ao or her father as characters. I'm not sure what it is. Not that I think it's bad. Ao is adorable and probably the best written child character in the whole season, if not the whole series. But I just don't feel much towards her development or endeavor over the course of this short. Maybe I'm just not the target audience? I don't know. I found this short to be okay. It didn't do anything I disliked, but it wasn't doing anything great outside the animation. A perfect example of great art with minimal writing. I really wish I could say more about it, but it does absolutely nothing I can complain about in the end, so I'll go middle of the road. Above Tatooine Rhapsody, below The Village Bride. Finally, out of Season 2. And I genuinely had a much more positive experience going back to this one. It helps that I like Sith, Screecher's Reach, I Am Your Mother, and the Spy Dancer a whole lot more than I did previously. It's still not great because the lower 4 of this season really do stink, with Bandits being worst here. But I do see the appeal in the season that I missed the first time around. I'd still rather rewatch the first season before the second, but I'm significantly more content with this one now. Now it's time for Season 3. I am going in completely blind. All I know is that some of the Season 1 entries got sequels here. Brilliant! Alright, glass half full here. Let's jump into the sequel to the Duel. Oh, this better be good. I was really prepared to be disappointed. Honestly, the Duel did not need a sequel, at least not as much as others in Season 1. I was ready for a short that misunderstood what made the original great, over-explaining the Ronin as a character, making him a clear hero, or just rehashing what worked before. And I'm not sure about anybody else, but I was actually really impressed. Initially, it seemed rough. It seemed like a rehash of the original. The Ronin found another Sith, engages in lightsaber combat, bada bing, bada boom. But then, the Crusaders show up, led by a Jedi who seems like a match for the Ronin. Obviously some nitpicks, like in how the Crusaders, real subtle name, have clone armor, and the Ronin's droid was sliced up beyond repair while being completely fixed in the next scene. But beyond that, this is a massive step up in scale and stakes. The Ronin now has to unite with enemies he just made to take on an enemy from his past. It's a temporary truce that doesn't change who he is. And while the Crusader is from his past, we don't learn all that much about his encounter. But it does give us an insight to how independent the Ronin stays of both the Jedi and the Sith. And the Jedi in this episode is a whole can of worms himself. He lost to the Ronin in some battle, but the Ronin let him live. In essence, he's the embodiment of why a Sith would hate a Jedi. He and the Crusaders represent toxic justice. They're basically helldivers. They take too much pride in their work. This Jedi specifically has lost, nay, given up all of his humanity to become a machine for his cause, which isn't even clearly defined. He wears a fake smile as if everything he does is a good thing, and regarding the Ronin, he's become so obsessed with destroying him, convinced that his extreme anger against him and desire for revenge is part of an image of self-control and justice. He's so far beyond hope, living in a delusional world where he's doing a good thing, and justifying horrid actions he's done to himself and others as a pursuit of peace. The Ronin doesn't really kill him, he just puts him out of his misery. Yeah, it's not subtle, but it's deep. The name Crusaders tends to suggest it's an allegory specifically against toxic Christianity, but it's handled so well that if you think that's all it represents, then well, you can sink a ship with that irony. If nothing else, the Crusader is a much better villain than the Bandit Sith, who wasn't even bad in any way. But beyond the villains, the ragtag schedule force trying to take them out works great. We have Ewoks. I don't know why people have problems with Ewoks. I think they're great. They work as a primal force standing up to a technologically superior army. I have no problem with that. We've got fun and creative technology to keep the other Crusaders busy while the Ronin takes on the machine. And each of these key players show why they're not necessarily a good person, but are the best at what they do and are the only ones with any chance of taking down the Crusaders. And when that duel comes to pass, it's just as stylistic and bombastic as the original, if not more. Honestly, I can totally understand why someone wouldn't like this as much as the original Duel. It may brush a little too close to dumb technology, exploring the Ronin's past and making him an unequivocal hero, but for me, it walks that tightrope perfectly. Yeah, that technology can be pretty absurd, but I really like how all the other aspects are handled. The Ronin remains ambiguous, he's not a clean good guy like Mando or Boba, and he's now working with criminals to take down an enforcer of the law who wants nothing more than to kill him. Thus, I think it's a great sequel to The Duel and surpasses it in quality. Well done, top of the list. I learned a little Japanese, but not this much. Shoot. The Song of Four Wings. This short made a great first impression with the cassette and the astromech and the overall sense of style. It really blends the older anime looks of the 80s and 90s with 3D models and environments. I love the 2D faces on the characters, and I think the flashback scenes are actually 2D, though that might be wrong, but if it is, that's masterful work there. This is another fun episode. Not too serious, not too deep, just fun. This former princess is scouting out an area for the rebellion. She finds a destroyed settlement and one survivor, Wumpus. Wumpus is cute. Imperial showed up, and it's time to run. I'd almost call it a cozy episode, honestly. The sound design and the whole vibe of the planet has a really neat synthwave feel to it. Yeah, there's danger, but not really a sense that anything bad is gonna happen. And if you want some more action, I will say that all these action scenes are very well animated, even if they are a little goofy. Like, a barrage of seismic charges would be devastating and very overkill in canon Star Wars, but here, it's a real fun speeder evasion scene. And then, holy crap, X-Wing mech suit, that's something, and I can't even get mad at it. This short basically just pumps CBD into your ears at the start, forces you to relax, and you can't really get mad at anything. It's so masterfully chill whilst being entertaining. Though that chill does come at the expense of the episode's pacing. I feel like there was a whole minute added onto the runtime because of a handful of shots that just stick on for what may as well be a single keyframe for way too long. Almost like it couldn't decide between build-up and stretching out the runtime. But like I said, I can't complain much. This was by far the chillest of the episodes thus far. Because of its nature, I can't put it too high, but I can put it above the twins, below the Spy Dancer. The sequel to The Ninth Jedi is titled Child of Hope, and let me jump back to what I said about this short before. This could either be just another story in this continuity, a true standalone sequel, or it could be episode 2 in what may as well be a longer series. Payback was the former, Child of Hope is the latter. It even ends on a to-be-continued screen. Thanks for waiting 4 years. It opens with Kara being blown out of her ship and abandoned in the vacuum of space. My goodness. She's found on a biospherical ship run by a droid named Tedo, who recognized her as Jedi and asked for help. It's weird. She sets up to have an arc where she learns how to use the Force by believing in herself, but that's done away with by having her lift a huge statue at maybe the halfway point. Then it's an effort to get Kara back to the other Jedi. The bandits from earlier find the ship and invade. Lightsaber combat ensues. But then Tedo puts Kara in the escape pod and sacrifices himself. I don't know what to feel here. Okay, first and foremost, if you're looking for the conclusion to The Ninth Jedi, don't. This episode does so little to advance the overarching plot of this world. Kara barely even develops as a character. She learns how to use the Force very effectively, then thinks she isn't a Jedi. It's so weird. I genuinely don't know what they're trying to do with her character, or if this even counts as character development. You can also forget about the other Jedi. They barely make an appearance. The design of the mercenaries is cool, I guess. Tedo is fun enough, easily the most memorable part of the short. I did get a little sad at his sacrifice, but I'm wondering if I really should have, and wow, if you really like The Ninth Jedi and were wetting your pants at the thought of continuation, I can't imagine how disappointed you must be. Actually, I can. I was really excited for the Book of Boba Fett. This is definitely weaker than the first on pretty much every scale. Except I guess the dialogue was a little better. But then there's also the factor of time. We waited 4 years for a continuation of this story, and I guess a series is coming out in 2026? Alright, sure. But still, that's some abysmal wait times between episodes. If this were the second episode of a series and the next would come out in a week or so, this would be much higher. But as it is, it's just flat out unfinished, if not just an ad for a limited series. I'm sorry, I don't like it. I get that it's supposed to be part of a bigger animated series, but as it's presented to the average audience member, it's just not great. It's not like I can think of a better series to make.
I miss her so much.
Above Tatooine Rhapsody, below Owl Song. Fight me. Remember that Outlaws game that everybody forgot about? That's this episode. The Bounty Hunters revolves around a bounty hunter who is on the run from someone she crossed, gets hired by a corporation, turns out the corporation was bad, she turns on them, saves kids, yay! There is nothing to this short. Nothing. Seven is the most generic bounty hunter girl since Kay Vess, spouting out one-liners said by other cooler people. Nothing about her is deep. Her split personality droid is cool, I guess. The Droidica was cool. But other than that, it's just a nothing burger. I can't think of a single reason to recommend this to you. I can't even think of that much else to say. It's not ugly, but it doesn't look great. The action is minimal. It's just... do I even need to talk about it anymore? It's so bland. It's the same as every Outlaw with a Heart of Gold story we've gotten since Han Solo. Seven sees child slaves, realizes slavery is bad, and there's a story that can work with that, but there's basically no emotional depth here. At least Mando's turning around for Grogu was a bit more of an internal struggle and definitely more selfish in the grand scheme of things. In fact, just rewatch Mando Season 1, or A New Hope, or play the HD remake of Bounty Hunter. This short has nothing. It's not egregious like Bandits of Golak, but it's not remotely worth your time. Above Akakiri, but below TOB1. Yuko's treasure is, if nothing else, memorable. Animated by Kinema Citrus, the good folks behind The Village Bride, it's definitely memorable in its style and choices? Why is there a bear? It's not even explained as some other species like a tabaxi or a lepi, it's just a bear droid. A bear droid who takes care of this kid named Yuko. Anyway, this short is cute enough. It's basically the Goonies. Pirates are looking for treasure and they need the bear droid, whose name is Billy, by the way. Oh, that's... wow. So Yuko and this former pirate named Sola need to go save him. A big part of this episode that I actually really like is how goofy these bad guys are. They're very incompetent and are led by Steve Buscemi as a fox. This actually got some laughs out of me. I don't know why, but this was the one that really did it for me. And then, oh, they're dead. That got dark. It has a very satisfying conclusion, which even got me a little bit misty-eyed. Maybe this kind of seems my kryptonite. It's a cute little short about two kids on a mission to save a bear droid. If that floats your boat, then here is an easy recommendation. Do I dislike anything about it? Not really. I guess I could have used a little bit more of the villain squad. Rip Fox here. But I can also definitely name better things to do with your time. But it has a vibe, and it was definitely better than most of Skeleton Crew. Above the twins, but below the Song of Four Wings. Despite not being called The Village Bride, The Lost Ones is a sequel to The Village Bride. Second verse, same as the first. F comes to learn about new people and their conflicts alongside the audience. That isn't criticism, by the way. That's a structure that can work very well for this format of animation. We see F come to find another settlement, seemingly destroyed by a carbonite mining disaster. And once you realize that, it's genuinely really dark in a horrifying way. F being a stranger in this land is pretty compelling, as before, especially given that this is the time of the Empire and she can only show so much of herself. And second verse, same as the first. There's all this super intriguing build-up regarding how the Empire makes the Jedi seem like bad guys, and how these kids might mature past the Empire's lies, and a bit of that comes back into play when F's master, whom she watched die, is alive and is now an Inquisitor. I don't know what to say. Okay, so I guess I'll tell you a blar. Is it better or worse than The Village Bride? Better. No, wait, worse. I'm so tired. Okay. Pro. The carbonite mining disaster is a fantastic and terrifying idea. Con, it could have been taken much further. We mostly just see the aftermath of it that sets the basis for the episode. Pro. Aspects from the build-up actually come into play this time. Carbonite ends up being the key to victory against the Empire, and the whole growing up theme kind of makes sense with the Master asking F to grow up, I think. Con, it was clearly going in another direction with how the Empire spreads misinformation. But that just goes nowhere, and yeah, the Master being alive with no explanation doesn't really fly. Like, this is some Palpatine level garbage. I guess the lightsaber choreography is better than The Village Bride, though that's not a high bar to clear, so maybe I just need to watch this one again? I'm confuddled. You know, I'll actually put it below The Village Bride, above Al's song. Because despite everything, I was engaged with The Village Bride up until the climax, where here, I fell off it much, much quicker. Maybe I'll like it more on rewatch. I don't know. So, I came to realize that there might not have been an amazing amount of communication between studios making these shorts. Not that there needed to be, but Season 1 had 2 different episodes about a Force user defending a rural village, Season 2 had 2 different episodes about siblings on the run from the Empire, and Season 3 has 2 different Han Solo type episodes, really killing the variety. I really don't have a problem with that storyline specifically, but it's easily the one that's been botched the most since the original Han Solo story. It flopped with Mando, it flopped with Boba, it flopped with Outlaws, and it flopped earlier this season. And this one was better, I think? I wasn't enraged, I guess, but I kind of kept waiting for the short to get started. This planet was once ruled by the royal family, but was taken over by the Empire, but the prince of the family survived and has a huge bounty on his head. Cut to the smuggler in need of credits, and a mysterious woman offers payment for transporting cargo. What is this cargo? I'll give you 3 guesses. I wouldn't say there's nothing to this short, but man, is it predictable. Oh, the special cargo is the prince everybody can't shut up about? Shocking. The caretaker who doesn't believe the Jedi staged a coup against the Chancellor turns out to be a Jedi? What a twist. The smuggler has skills that can aid in the rebellion against the Empire? Man, only the Joker could have concocted such a turn of events. Even for being called the Smuggler herself is a pretty backseat pilot to all the actions of this Prince and Jedi. She flies the ship away in the end, but she's really a bystander until then. I don't know, maybe I would call this a nothing burger. I mean, at least the bounty hunters had cool droids. I don't hate this short nearly as much, but I can't recommend it to anyone. You're probably better off just looking up the Tatooine or Death Star escape on YouTube. You can get more out of those single scenes than this entire episode. So, I guess below the bounty hunters? I enjoyed it more in the moment, but writing it down on paper, I can't really say much that I really liked. So, by the power of objectivism, below the bounty hunters, above Akakiri. Man, is it just me or is Season 3 a real rough patch? Okay, this is a concept. A Padawan is blinded by a Sith and has to learn to navigate and survive in the wilderness without her eyes. I'm one of the Force is with me. And just the animation, portraying what this girl can see through her feelings in the Force is just fantastic. I'm honestly really disappointed whenever it cuts to a shot from a third-person perspective. I probably could have watched this whole short in this blind environment. It'd be like watching the whole episode of Daredevil from Matt's perspective. Honestly, not a great idea for a series, but for a single episode, that's just fantastic. As an execution of this concept, like I said, it could have been taken to an extreme, and it seems like it was testing the waters, but as far as a Jedi isolated and struggling for survival and sure of what to do with herself, it takes it to at least a satisfying degree. It truly tries to give a Chariot-like perspective of this girl who is alone and desperate to survive, trying to figure out what's real, what's in front of her, and what's in the Force, and what's in her head. I think this is what Sith could have been. Phenomenal animation applied to a concept that complements it. I will say that the fact that this girl is alone, her self-dialogue can get pretty annoying, and her voice actress isn't phenomenal. But as far as Star Wars Visions goes, this is a prime example of what a short should be. Honestly, with the exception of Payback, this is a far cry better than what the rest of the season has given us. It's unique, creative, deep, and gorgeous. Above the Elder, below Screecher's reach. So, I never watched trailers, but simply from the thumbnails and descriptions on Disney+, Black was the short I was most excited for in Season 3. On top of that, it's created by David Productions of JoJo and Cells at Work fame. I mean, I've never seen either of those, but that's a big name. So, let's see what we've got. What the hell is happening? Okay, I think this is a psychedelic, drug-filled interpretation of what a stormtrooper saw as the second Death Star was on the verge of destruction. I think. Is this what ketamine feels like? This is an all-eye-candy episode. It doesn't even bother with writing. No dialogue, just a stormtrooper on the verge of death, somehow perceiving everything leading up to such through this animation? I genuinely can't recommend this to anyone as a story to enjoy. I can't recommend you watch it, but as the product of someone who took drugs and pretended he was on the Death Star when it blew up, this looks phenomenal. It's definitely abstract art for those who like it. Where is this stormtrooper currently? Why is he missing an arm and most of his helmet? Is this even the Death Star battle? Or is he just in some later battle and recounting everything that's led up to this? Why does he fly a TIE fighter and ride speeders? Why isn't the Millennium Falcon in the Death Star battle? Why is every other stormtrooper he sees just a copy of himself? Why is he fighting a copy of himself? Why does he take its hand at the end? Why is there bossa nova music playing all over this? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But it's presented in such a way similar to a Miyazaki movie where I'm sure there is an answer that will die with the creator, and the fans will always speculate. And I bet a lot of animation nerds freaked out at it, but as a story, I can't put it too high. But I was very entertained watching it as a whole. Above the Song of Four Wings, below the Spy Dancer. And that's all of them. All 27 shorts. And I love going through these. I love going back to seasons 1 and 2 and going into season 3, even if it was the season with the largest amount of stinkers. Even though there are some genuine masterpieces in season 2 and 3, I think the series definitely went on the decline in quality. While I really enjoy what these studios can do with a vast universe of Star Wars, the short format definitely played a part. Some studios were trying to pitch their own story, which led to feeling of wanting more in many cases. Others definitely felt like a contract job with little creative endeavor. Especially in season 3, a handful of shorts felt like they didn't really get to make a Star Wars short, they just had to. But some thrived in this format, taking advantage of the runtime and budget to create efficient stories with strong concepts and animation. It does pain me that some of these shorts will probably never get a sequel or series, but there's still a beauty to be had in the variety of this series. And despite its missteps, Star Wars Visions remains one of my favorite species of Star Wars media. Maybe not because of what it contains, but because of what it represents. It's like the Fazbear fanverse. Star Wars is a universe that many have fallen in love with over the years for many different reasons, and allowing external voices to say why they love it and add their own dash to it in a non-canon way is fantastic. What I'm saying is, go read my fanfic. Allowing more artists to use what you've created to tell new stories is never a bad thing. Yeah, an artist may not be the most qualified to make a story in that universe, but that freedom itself is good. That freedom gave us Andor, and Disney had so little involvement in the development of Andor, it allowed it to be really great, so connect the dots, Disney. Hire good artists and let them do their job, just like Visions. Yeah, there's going to be bad art, but light cannot exist without the dark. We can only decide what is good art and vote for it with our wallets. If I were at Lucasfilm, I'd honestly invest into a few of these studios. They floored me with what they were able to do. And so, without further ado, all Star Wars Visions episodes ranked from worst to best. The Bandits of Golak, Akakiri, The Smuggler, The Bounty Hunters, TOB1, In the Stars, The Pit, Tatooine Rhapsody, The Ninth Jedi, Child of Hope, Owl's Song, The Lost Ones, The Village Bride, Sith, The Twins, Yuko's Treasure, The Song of Four Wings, Black, The Spy Dancer, I Am Your Mother, The Elder, The Bird of Paradise, Screecher's Reach, Journey to the Dark Head, Lop and Ocho, The Ninth Jedi, The Duel Payback. My name is AJ Plays. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with you.